Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. Whether you're winding down from a long day or just need something peaceful to have on in the background, you're in exactly the right place. I've got my Minecraft world loading up in the background, blocks softly breaking, water flowing, everything just quiet and cozy. There's something oddly satisfying about hearing justice get served while watching someone calmly stack cobblestone, like the audacity some people have and the poetic karma that hits them right where it hurts. Chef's kiss, and let's be honest, sometimes the best part is watching karma show up right on schedule. Tonight's stories? They go from mildly petty to full-blown chaotic, entitled Bosses, Freeloading Roommates, Manipulative Family Members, you name it. So get comfy and stay tuned because the twist coming up, you won't see them coming. I work at a mid-sized marketing agency, one of those places where people say, we're like a family. In that way, that usually means there's definitely going to be a betrayal. I'd been there 3 years. Not flashy, not climbing the ladder too aggressively, just solid work, happy clients, and a decent relationship with my team. But apparently that was threatening to someone. Enter Amanda. Now, Amanda was the kind of coworker who could smile at you in the kitchen while simultaneously filing a complaint about your tone in an email from 3 weeks ago. You know the type. She joined the company about 9 months after me and made it very clear. She was gunning for a promotion. Nothing wrong with ambition, but her version came with some interesting tactics. We were on the same project team for a major client, a luxury retail brand with a lot of visibility, huge budget, high stakes. Naturally, Amanda volunteered to co-lead the campaign with me. She said she wanted to learn from how I handled strategy. I figured sure, let her shadow me, get her hands dirty. Big mistake. At first, it was little things. She'd jump on calls before me and recap decisions I made as if they were hers. She'd forward my reports to leadership without credit. She even started using phrases from my pitch decks in her personal presentations, but I kept brushing it off. Pick your battles, right? And then came the client disaster. About 6 weeks into the campaign, we sent a major deliverable, a social media rollout plan tied to their new product line. It was supposed to go live the next morning, except someone had swapped in the wrong dates and hashtags. Not just wrong, competitor hashtags, like publicly promoting a rival brand's launch. The client caught it immediately and was furious. Our director called a meeting. Amanda showed up with a printout of the deck and a highlighter. She circled the sections with errors and said, and I quote, "I'm not sure what OP was thinking when they signed off on this." My jaw actually dropped, and the worst part, she'd gone into the document history and deleted the track changes that showed she was the one who edited that section last. Just wiped it clean. The project was delayed, the client relationship got rocky, and leadership demoted me from lead strategist to support on the account until trust could be rebuilt. The audacity is breathtaking, and here's where it gets good. Instead of flipping out or running to HR, which, let's be honest, would have gone nowhere, I decided to try something else. Amanda wanted my job? Fine, let her have it. I started feeding her the kind of guidance she thought she wanted, just tweaked slightly to make her look smarter, until it didn't. I gave her buzzword-heavy decks full of trends that were already outdated. I suggested disruptive campaign angles that sounded cutting edge, but were pulled straight from last year's case studies. And because Amanda didn't actually understand the difference between strategy and fluff, she ran with it. Executives loved her confidence. They started putting her in front of bigger clients. I sat quietly in the background, taking notes, but that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. She got tapped to present a new client proposal to a panel of senior execs, the kind of gig that usually determined fast-track promotions. She was giddy. She asked if I could help polish a few slides, and I smiled and said, of course. What I gave her was a Frankenstein mashup of marketing fluff, recycled KPIs, and a plagiarized campaign outline I found in a case study from a now-defunct agency. Blog. She didn't read it, not once. She presented it to the panel, word for word. One of the execs caught the plagiarism immediately. Apparently, they'd worked with the agency that originally created the campaign 2 years ago. The room went silent. Amanda froze. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep digging up stories like this. Now, back to the fallout. They asked her on the spot, did she write this? Was she aware it was plagiarized? She mumbled something about collaborative effort and taking inspiration, but it was too late. HR was brought in. The presentation was flagged. So were her previous decks, which, oh surprise, had also borrowed heavily from other people's work. Amanda was placed on leave pending investigation. Within 2 weeks, she was gone. No big announcement, just scrubbed from Slack and removed from the org chart. 2 days after that, I got called into my manager's office. "We know you weren't responsible for the earlier campaign mistake," she said almost sheepishly. "The leadership team regrets the demotion and would like to offer you your role back, along with a raise." I played it cool, but internally, fireworks. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about giving someone the space and the rope to prove exactly who they are. This one still makes me laugh. She wanted so badly to shine that she couldn't even be bothered to understand the tools she was using. That would make anyone's blood boil. But you have to admit, there's something deeply satisfying about watching someone build their own downfall out of stolen ideas and ego. But that wasn't even the worst office sabotage I've seen. The next one involves a CEO, a fake spreadsheet, and a firing heard all the way down the hallway. I was only 6 months into my first real tech job when I wrote the code that changed everything. Junior developer, straight out of college, sitting in a cube wedged between the server closet and a microwave that short-circuited every time someone warmed up soup. I was just grateful to be there, and I knew the drill. Head down, prove yourself, don't make waves. Our team had been struggling for months with this one specific client request. Basically, they wanted a custom algorithm that could dynamically adapt marketing content based on user behavior in real time. Everyone said it couldn't be done without expensive third-party software. So I stayed late a few nights, did some experimenting, slept under my desk once or twice, and then it clicked. I figured out a solution. It was efficient, scalable, and didn't require any licensing costs. I named it Modiflex, short for modular flexibility. Not the sexiest name, but I was proud of it. I ran simulations, compiled clean documentation, built a demo interface, and sent it to my manager, David, with a note. "Would love your feedback before I show this to the team." That was on a Thursday. On Monday, I walked into the weekly team meeting and saw my demo projected on the big screen. David was presenting it, confident, animated, using phrases straight from my documentation. Except now he was calling it the David Protocol. I wish I were joking. He even slapped his initials on the final slide like some kind of tech signature. I sat there stunned, wondering if maybe this was some elaborate prank. But no. He looked me in the eye, smiled, and said, "Thanks for your help testing this last week." Testing. Right. That would make anyone's blood boil. Now here's the thing. I could have raised a fuss right then. I could have spoken up in front of everyone. But instead, I kept smiling, nodded, took notes, because what David didn't know was that Modiflex had a little surprise built into it. I had embedded a digital watermark and an internal tracker deep in the back end. It wasn't visible in the UI, not referenced in the docs, just a tiny delta signature on every API call and code execution, pinging back to my private log. You know, just a little insurance. Standard stuff when you're still paranoid from 4 years of group project freeloaders. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. 2 weeks later, David was invited to present his solution to our executive team. Word had gotten out. People were excited. We were talking press releases, partnerships, investor meetings, the whole 9 yards. David even hinted at leadership opportunities coming his way. And still not a single mention of my name. So I waited. The day of the exec demo, I made sure the Modiflex tracking dashboard was live. Every click, every call, every single request the system processed in that room. It all lit up on my screen, with my developer tag attached. The best part? I routed a summary report straight to the CTO's inbox. It included usage analytics, backend logs, metadata on the original build, and a short note that read, "Happy to walk through the full development history of this tool if needed." OP. Less than an hour later, I got a meeting invite from the CTO's assistant. Quick sync, 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned into 45. He asked thoughtful questions. I answered them all. I showed my commit history, dated documentation, original wireframes. Everything matched. David, meanwhile, was still upstairs shaking hands and soaking in the praise. That afternoon, he was pulled into a closed-door meeting. The door didn't stay closed for long. Turns out executives don't like being lied to, especially not when someone tries to leverage stolen work into a promotion. By the end of the week, David was fired for fraud and misconduct. I was offered a permanent position on the innovation team and a signing bonus that nearly made me cry. They renamed the tool too, back to Modiflex, the way it should have been all along. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting the truth walk into the room before you do. The irony of it all? David wanted to be the face of innovation, but all he managed to do was broadcast exactly who wasn't doing the work. He built his downfall using my code as a foundation, and I didn't have to lift a finger. This guy really thought he could steal someone's brainchild, rename it after himself, and ride it into a promotion. That's not just unethical, it's painfully lazy. He got caught because he never even read the code he claimed to write. And speaking of getting what you deserve, our next tale proves that even family members aren't immune when they push too far. Family drama is its own special kind of chaos. You can't exactly block your sister the way you block a toxic coworker or an ex. There's history, there's guilt, there's that lingering sense of but they're family, even when they do something that would have any other person dead to you. Which brings me to my sister, Danielle. Danielle and I weren't always close. Growing up, she was the golden child, always in the spotlight, always charming, always somehow getting a pass for stuff that would have gotten me grounded into the next century. I was the quieter one, the rule follower, the responsible sibling, the reliable one, which, spoiler alert, basically turned me into her emergency wallet by the time we hit adulthood. She was always between jobs, or waiting on a deposit, or just short on rent this one time. I bailed her out a few times in my early 20s. Nothing major, just a few hundred here and there. She always promised to pay me back. She never did. So I stopped lending. I started setting boundaries. Told her no more money, no co-signing anything, no temporary use of my accounts. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. Fast forward to me checking my credit one random afternoon while applying for a new apartment. Everything looked fine at first, until I saw a credit card I didn't recognize. Then another, and then a third. All active, all under my name, and all with balances over $1,000. That would make anyone's blood boil. I called the banks. One of the accounts had been opened just 3 months prior, online, with an email address I'd never seen. But the mailing address, my parents' house, where Danielle just so happened to be living again. At first I didn't want to believe it. I told myself maybe it was some clerical error. Maybe someone hacked my info. So I called Danielle. Figured I'd ask gently, casually. Her response, "Oh, those cards? Yeah, you must have just forgotten opening them. You've always been kind of scatterbrained with stuff like this." I felt my stomach drop. The calm, casual way she said it. Like I was the one being dramatic for asking. When I pushed back, she doubled down. "I mean, if you didn't want me using them, why did you leave your info just lying around all those years?" The audacity is breathtaking. Now I could have gone to the police. I had enough to file charges, but I also knew how that would go with my parents. They'd guilt me into dropping it. They'd say I was ruining the family or tearing us apart over some credit cards. So I got creative instead. First, I contacted all 3 credit bureaus and initiated a full fraud alert and freeze. That stopped any future accounts from being opened. Then I called every card issuer and formally reported identity theft. Sent over all the documentation, my ID, proof of residence, even screenshots of Danielle's social media, showing purchases she'd bragged about, with timestamps that lined up perfectly with the charges. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. One of the banks contacted me to say they had reason to believe the fraud extended beyond my identity. Turns out Danielle had also listed her own phone number and backup email on one of the cards, but still used my name and social security number. They flagged it, and then they called her. Danielle freaked. She called me screaming, asking why I was trying to ruin her life. I calmly explained that I hadn't ruined anything. I just told the truth, legally, and it gets better. Because I had access to enough of her fake application details, I helped the banks redirect collection efforts. I gave them her real address, her real phone number, her actual email, all legally, because by reporting fraud, I had every right to provide contact info for the person responsible. Cue the calls. Danielle started getting flooded with collection notices and demand letters. Late fees piled up, interest rates ballooned. Her credit, once barely passable, began tanking fast. She tried to spin it to our parents like I was being vindictive, that I was punishing her for being in a hard place. But the truth had legs and receipts. I showed my parents the full paper trail, the applications, the screenshots, the denial letters for my apartment, the hours I'd spent fixing her mess. For once, they didn't defend her. Danielle moved out of their house not long after. Not sure if she was asked to leave or just embarrassed. Either way, I haven't heard from her since, aside from one email where she said I was just as selfish as everyone else in this family. Right. Sometimes the most selfish thing you can do is expect other people to fix the disasters you keep creating. Honestly, I don't even feel bad. She stole my identity, so I gave it right back to her, along with every single consequence that came with it. This revenge didn't need yelling. It didn't need drama. It just needed a quiet spreadsheet, a few phone calls, and the right amount of legal follow-through. And she did the rest herself. Wow. This one is like financial karma with a side of poetic justice. You know someone's deep in denial when they use your own stolen credit card, list their number, and act like you are the problem. Sometimes the best revenge is simply not shielding someone from their own mess anymore. If you think that's cold, just wait. Our next story takes place at a wedding, where one cousin learns what happens when you disrespect the bride on her big day. Weddings bring out weird sides of people. You plan for everything: weather, seating charts, dietary needs, backup playlists, but nothing prepares you for a relative with main character syndrome and zero boundaries. In my case, that person was my cousin Amanda. Amanda and I had always had a weird dynamic. We were close-ish growing up, in the way that cousins with overlapping school years and forced sleepovers tend to be. But somewhere in our 20s, that closeness faded and was replaced with subtle competition. She always had to one-up me. If I posted vacation pics, she'd post luxury hotel room shots with passive-aggressive captions like, "Not everyone can handle 5-star service, LOL." If I got a new job, she'd suddenly have a better offer she was thinking of turning down. So when I got engaged, I braced myself. I knew Amanda wasn't going to make it easy, but I also didn't expect her to go nuclear. Our wedding was small, 60 people, mostly family and a few close friends. It wasn't fancy. We'd saved for nearly 2 years, but it was exactly what we wanted: elegant, intimate, and centered around celebrating with the people who mattered most. I didn't want drama, so I kept things simple. No over-the-top bridal party politics, no elaborate gift registry. We even let kids come because we didn't want to exclude anyone. Cue regret. Amanda showed up with her 2 kids, ages 7 and 10. I'm not exaggerating when I say they immediately started treating the venue like it was their personal jungle gym. During the ceremony, they were whispering loudly, arguing over an iPad, and one of them spilled orange juice on my dress before the vows. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point, our first dance. We'd hired a photographer and a videographer to capture the moment. It wasn't a big choreographed routine, just something quiet and meaningful between me and my new husband. The music started. The lighting was perfect. And halfway through the song, Amanda's oldest kid ran onto the dance floor. Not just ran across it, started dancing. Loudly, clumsily, doing some kind of TikTok routine while yelling, "Look at me," like it was his show. And Amanda, she was laughing, filming it on her phone like it was the cutest thing ever. Not even trying to stop him. The photographer missed the shot. The moment was gone. My husband and I tried to reset, but everyone was distracted. It wasn't just a ruined dance. It was like Amanda had yanked the emotional core out of one of the most important moments of our lives. I pulled her aside afterward, quietly, because I didn't want a scene. I said, "Hey, I know you probably didn't mean for that to happen, but that was a really important moment for us. Could you help your kids stay off the dance floor for the rest of the night?" She rolled her eyes. "They're just kids. Relax. If you didn't want them there, you should have made it adults only." The level of dismissiveness was wild. I said I didn't want to exclude family, and she actually said, "Well, maybe next time think about your priorities." I walked away before I said something I'd regret, but later that night I found out she had posted the video online. Captioned it, "Livening up this snorefest wedding. You're welcome. tagging me with laughing emojis. I couldn't believe it. At that point, I had two choices: confront her and probably cause a blowout fight that would echo through the family for years, or stay calm, take notes, and get clever. I chose clever. First, I took screenshots of everything: her captions, her comments, her friends hyping her up for keeping it real. I saved all of it. Then I waited. A few weeks later, the wedding photos came back. Some of them were gorgeous. Others were ruined by her kids running in the background or sticking their hands into the cake table. But I focused on what I could salvage, and then I started subtly pushing back. Not publicly, not with drama, just quiet, strategic moves. I posted a thank you message online for the guests who helped make the day special, with a photo carousel that very clearly excluded Amanda and her kids, just enough for people to notice. I commented back to people who asked about the dance, saying things like, "We tried to have a special moment, but it didn't go as planned. Family can be unpredictable." That's when things started to turn. Mutual friends began commenting under Amanda's original video, asking if she knew she'd ruined the couple's first dance. A few people unfollowed her. One of her brand deal partners, a small fitness brand, quietly removed a recent collaboration post with her. Turns out, Amanda had been trying to build herself up as a family lifestyle influencer. Professional mom, organized chaos, Pinterest aesthetic. She'd just landed a small sponsorship deal for family etiquette content. You cannot make this up. So I emailed them. No rant, no emotional outburst. Just a polite message that said, "Hi, I noticed you're working with Amanda. Last name on family etiquette content." I wanted to share this clip from my wedding, where she encouraged her children to interrupt our first dance and posted it mocking the event. As someone who values grace and respect in family moments, I thought this might be relevant to your campaign messaging. I attached the video, screenshots, even the caption. They responded within 24 hours, thanking me and saying they were re-evaluating the partnership. Within a week, the post was gone. Amanda didn't say anything directly, but she started sharing vague quotes on her stories like, "Some people will smile to your face while stabbing you in the back." Classic. After that, the invites to family events started to dry up. Not because I asked anyone to take sides, just because people saw. They saw how she acted and how she responded when called out gently. She wasn't uninvited loudly. She was excluded quietly. Poetic, really. Amanda still hasn't apologized. But she did text me once, months later, asking if I'd snitched to the brand partner. I left it on red. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud or messy. Sometimes it's just letting someone expose themselves while you quietly gather receipts. This woman literally filmed herself ruining someone else's wedding and then posted it with her full name and sponsor tags. She built the framework for her own downfall, and I just handed it to the right people. Wow. I have to say, this one is a masterclass in calm retaliation. Amanda thought she was being funny and relatable, and ended up showing everyone exactly who she was. Sometimes, being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation means you win by simply not joining the circus. But sometimes, revenge isn't planned. It's instinct. And our next narrator only realized after the betrayal that they'd pulled off something brilliant without even trying. I've always been a pretty chill roommate. I clean up after myself. I pay rent on time. I don't throw parties or label milk with a passive-aggressive post-it. Basically, I'm the kind of person landlords love and roommates barely notice. Which is why it took me way too long to realize I'd moved in with a sociopath. Her name was Ellie. We weren't close friends before moving in, just acquaintances from work who figured splitting rent made more sense than throwing money at overpriced studios. It started out fine. She was friendly, talked a lot, had strong opinions about oat milk. Nothing too wild. But then weird stuff started happening. My favorite coffee mug? Dropped in the sink. My AirPods? Left in an Uber, apparently. Half a jar of organic almond butter? Must have gone bad, after it somehow vanished overnight. And every time I asked about it, Ellie would hit me with that wide-eyed, "Oh my God, no way, that's so weird," reaction, like we were in a sitcom and I was the forgetful roommate losing my mind. And that's the thing, she wanted me to think I was losing my mind. It started escalating slowly. A scarf I loved went missing, only to mysteriously show up in her laundry pile. I found one of my t-shirts on her floor and she insisted she'd bought the same one. One time I walked into the kitchen and saw her pouring my cold brew into her travel mug. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I thought this was mine. You're always using my stuff." That one hit me like a brick, because I realized she wasn't just stealing stuff, she was flipping it around on me. That would make anyone's blood boil. At first, I started second guessing myself. Was I being too sensitive? Was I overreacting to little things? Maybe we just had similar taste and it was all a coincidence. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. I had just gotten home from a long shift and was heading to my room when I noticed my bedroom door was unlocked. I always lock it when I leave. Always. Inside, nothing looked stolen, but something felt off. My books were slightly rearranged. A necklace that normally sat on my dresser was in the middle of the floor. So I asked Ellie casually, "Hey, did you go into my room today?" She gave me this hurt expression and said, "Wow, do you really think I'd do that? I can't believe you'd even ask me that." Classic gaslighting move. Turn the suspicion into an attack. Make me feel like the bad guy for having boundaries. At that point, I was done. But instead of confronting her or losing it and turning the apartment into a war zone, I got quiet and I got smart. I did some research, bought a few legal indoor security cameras, and installed them in common areas: kitchen, hallway, and living room. Nothing in bedrooms or bathrooms, obviously. I even told her about them. Played it off like it was for security, since we'd had a few packages stolen recently. She pretended not to care. What she didn't realize was that I'd also set up a simple voice recorder app on an old phone and tucked it inside a bowl on a high kitchen shelf, just to capture conversations when I wasn't around. What I found? Unreal. One day, while I was supposedly at work, Ellie walked into the living room and practiced crying in front of a mirror. Full-on rehearsals. She literally said out loud, "No, I didn't take anything, I swear. I'd never do that to you." Then tried different tones, different expressions. I sat there watching the footage like I was in a deleted scene from a true crime documentary. She even mimicked my voice once. Are you sure you didn't just forget where you left it?" Like she was rehearsing how to flip things back on me. I compiled everything: screen grabs, clips, audio snippets. I built a little timeline with matching receipts and footage of her taking food, wearing my clothes, blaming me for her mess, all of it. And then I made a PowerPoint. No, really. I called it the Ellie Files. It was color-coded, had timestamps, even a soundtrack, because if I was going to confront her, I was going to make it cinematic. But I didn't want to do it alone. So I invited over 2 mutual friends and her sister, people who'd noticed things too, but had never spoken up. I said I wanted to clear the air. Ellie walked in all smiles, thought it was a movie night, and then I opened my laptop. At first, she laughed, said it was creepy that I'd been recording. But the laughter died pretty quickly when her sister saw footage of Ellie throwing away a birthday gift she'd given me and pretending she'd never seen it. Then came the audio. When Ellie realized I had her fake crying on tape, she froze. Absolute silence. Her sister stood up and just said, "Wow, I defended you. I actually defended you." That was the end of it. Ellie moved out 2 weeks later, tried to claim I'd created a hostile environment. I showed our landlord the presentation. He laughed and waived the lease break fee for me. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is shine a light on the lies. This girl thought she was running a one-woman psychological thriller and didn't realize the credits were already rolling. Wow. This story is basically what happens when a gaslighter gets caught in 4K, with a soundtrack and matching slides. Ellie wanted to make you question your reality, and instead she got a front row seat to hers unraveling. And the PowerPoint? Chef's kiss. Sometimes the most reasonable thing you can do in an unreasonable situation is go full project manager and expose the chaos like a professional. Actually, no transition needed, because there's one more short tale to send us off in perfect full circle fashion. There's something funny about the way people treat quiet jobs. You know the ones, low visibility, niche industry, not flashy or cool. No startup hoodie, no office ping pong table, no hustle culture vibes, just stable, focused work, boring to some, peaceful to others. For me, it was data archival systems, basically digital infrastructure for long-term file storage. Not sexy, not viral, but reliable and, quietly, very lucrative. But try explaining that to people who peaked in high school. I grew up in a smallish town where success was measured in volume. The louder you talked about your job, your money, your big city lifestyle, the more respect you got. And if you didn't talk about it at all, if you were quiet, content, boring, you were either a failure or a mystery. After graduation, I stayed mostly under the radar. I didn't move far, took my time, started working with a few niche tech firms. Then I built a little consulting firm of my own, working with hospitals and local governments. Nothing glitzy, but the contracts were steady, the clients were loyal, and by my late 20s, I was doing just fine. But if you asked the people I went to high school with, oh yeah, OP, I think they still work in storage or something with files. No idea. And then came the class reunion. Now, let me be clear, I didn't go, but the pictures and stories made their way to me. Someone posted a video of a few classmates, ones I used to sit behind in history class, mocking people who didn't show up. Some people probably didn't come because they're embarrassed. Like, if you're still working in tech support or whatever, just own it, man, one of them laughed. Another chimed in, yeah, I heard OP still lives around here. Probably stocking shelves or doing spreadsheets or something. And the laughter? That part stuck with me. Not because it hurt, but because it was just lazy. They hadn't bothered to check. They hadn't grown up. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. A few years after that, a local business came up for sale. Small but profitable. It did logistical coordination and back-end tech services for medium-sized retail stores. Basically, it was the behind-the-scenes glue for operations. Not exciting, but very familiar to me. And as it turned out, 3 of those classmates, the same ones from the reunion video, were working there now. Mid-level roles, not owners, not execs, just employees. I bought it, quietly. Through a holding company I already had for investment purposes. My name never touched the public paperwork. I let the existing manager stay on as a figurehead. I didn't change much, just optimized a few things, updated the back-end systems with, yes, my own software, and ran a few internal audits. The company's performance improved. Clients were happy, but we had redundancy in a few departments, and unfortunately, layoffs were on the table. And guess who ended up on the list? 2 of the 3. They weren't bad people, just average, coasting. One of them had been skating by for years, according to HR. The other barely met quotas. I didn't enjoy letting them go, but I made sure their severance packages were more than fair. Generous even. Career coaching services, extended benefits, a full month's notice. And then, on their last day, I sent out a farewell email to the team. Calm, grateful, professional, and signed it. OP, full name, owner, and founder. The silence after that email, immaculate. I didn't get a response. Didn't need one. Just knowing that they read it, connected the dots, and remembered every time they laughed about me doing spreadsheets for a living, that was enough. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't about payback. It's about patience. You don't need to scream, I made it. You just quietly keep building until the people who doubted you realize they've been standing in something you built the entire time. Wow. Just wow. There's something beautifully calm about this kind of revenge. No screaming, no drama. Just spreadsheets, patience, and one perfectly timed signature line. Sometimes giving someone a generous severance is more brutal than any argument. And the irony? The job they mocked ended up owning them. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, calculated, and poetic. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time for more Minecraft and more karma.